Welcome back.
We're here with part 2 of this episode, which the title of...
To be determined, but
Below.
It is about mental health and its ties to creativity. We're going to keep this intro short because if you listen to part 1, you know what the fuck's up. Go forth!
We are practically happy with Racer and Rhodes. Like and subscribe!
Like and subscribe, comment, review, give us some coin, and we love you.
Thank you. So that's the short on the evidence, the credible evidence that I could find. Now I'm going to turn
Which,
to...
like, credible only to the point until it gets decredited when something else happens and some more information is found.
Let's talk about that, because there's a lot of research on how other research on the link between mood disorders and creativity is maybe not so good. So as we talked about before, it's there's a lot of anecdotal stuff out there. Christina Taylor, who is a psychologist, did a meta-analysis of the research on mood disorders and creativity, finding no clear link between them. But she starts her article with an interesting idea.
I do like to comically imagine they just took someone who was just really sad, gave him a paintbrush, and they just looked at it and then did nothing with it and just like, clearly no link.
And that is science. So Taylor states, there are few problems with this notion. First, it lumps together all of mental illness in a way that is nearly impossible to study and come to a satisfying answer. Some mental health issues involve persistent depression, impaired thinking, lack of enthusiasm, and trouble with communicating that can impede creative work. On the other hand, some disorders involve mania, intense focus, irrationality, and risk-taking, and other symptoms that could potentially help creative endeavors. So that's kind of theorizing on her part. But the issue is that if we say there's something off about creatives and different creatives can have different things that are off about them,
and we kind of just start
mood
getting
disorders are very different.
Yeah.
Mental health can appear in very different ways.
Yeah.
And the claim being that
mentally ill makes you creative. What mental...
Right.
What...
If
what?
both
generally what?
mania and depression can help you be a better artist, we need to look into that more because those are opposite things.
Yes.
So psychiatrist Albert Rothenberg wrote a book called Creativity and Madness. And in that he writes, contrary to popular as well as professional belief, there is no specific personality type associated with outstanding creativity. He claims that only one characteristic of personality and orientation to life is absolutely across the board present in all creative people. Do you want to know what this is? Motivation. And I didn't agree with that until he defined motivation. The want to specifically create and to be creative, not merely to be successful or effective or even competent.
I don't even want to be good at what I do. I just want to do it.
Creating for creative space sake is the motivation he's referring to.
Wow, this sounds exactly like what I was talking about with the why I'm thinking about New York as being a place I want to be.
Basically, what Rothenberg is saying here is artists make art, and...
Crazy that they do that.
And that's the only similarity you can find between them. And I find that resonates. I read this book called Lives of the Artists. And in this book, Calvin Tompkins interviews many different modern artists and goes with them to their homes. It's a real comprehensive journalism type thing.
Yeah.
And tries to come up with something that links these people. And, some of them are more eccentric. Some of them are not. Some of them are more subdued. Some of them are egoistic. But he can't find something that makes all of these people artists. And then my favorite article from my research was by Judith Schlesinger. And she writes about creative myth conceptions. Isn't that clever?
Creative myth
conceptions.
Myth conceptions. Oh, I just got it. Fuck me.
So she writes that this mad genius idea is embedded so deeply into our collective imagination that it hardly matters whether it stands on science or not, which I agree with.
Even artists who would stand to be hurt by that notion also champion it. That was most of our fucking freshman year at an art institution. It was just like, we're all fucking crazy.
Yeah,
Wait, maybe
it
we
was.
shouldn't say that about ourselves.
It's almost comforting, too, to be like, oh, well, me being this way is what makes me so good at something.
It's almost like mentally ill people like to cope.
Oh.
Crazy.
But her critique is that psychologists should remember it's a wobbly foundation, this mad genius theory, before
wobble.
passing it along as fact. And her claim is actually that there are life-affirming variables, such as optimism, resilience, and creative flow, that could be potentially more applicable to artists than any of this sort of, well, more people that have mood disorders are creative, or more creatives have mood disorders jargon.
Yeah.
Another little point she made in her article, which wasn't the point, but I liked it. The concept of everyday creativity underscores the non-pathological view of its mechanism, while the growing recognition of environmental influences on creativity continues to erode the rigid focus on internal determinants. So that was fancy way of saying people make art even when they're not sad.
Yeah.
We have creatives in the kitchen that are making art for their own joy and consumption. And we have creativity that arises from your environment.
Yeah.
And she also makes the point that this idea that artists are sad, it has unfortunate implications for the perception of creativity, obviously, and the credibility of psychological research in general.
Also,
because
yes.
it's making these big jumps, right?
It's also kind of it intrinsically devalues what care needs to be given
Yes.
to those who are on like the neurodivergent spectrum.
And what
or
care they want to get. Because if you have
Yeah.
this perception of, well, the only reason I am good at drawing is because I'm bipolar.
sad about it.
No, honey. You should seek
Please get some.
anything you need to help with your mental state.
I'm sure you've seen this too. I've straight up been through it, like being misdiagnosed as like ADHD before I knew I had autism. Not wanting to take my medication that actively subdued my person because it meant that I might be able to do these things that I had to do, which at the time was fucking schoolwork.
Right.
Like in high school. Who said that that was the important thing I needed to think about at that moment?
Right. Let's just give him meth in the form of Adderall.
Let's give a child methamphetamine.
So insane. We have the same opinion about this.
But despite all that, if mental health is to be seen as this sort of determining factor of if I have it and I'm a creative, that's where it comes from.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Is so damaging.
It is.
Because you still won't then seek out what help can be given that will bring you a better quality of life. Whether that be therapy, whether that be proper medication for something that actually does need
'Cause-
assistance with.
Yeah, some people need it.
Some people need it.
And it's
And
a
that's
valid
not a thing to
thing to need.
belittle or something to wave off because your creative benefit's better. Your creative benefit's not better if you're dead.
Or even just taking care of yourself. It doesn't even have to be medicinal, but using, like, let's say, God forbid, you're an alcoholic and a creative.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have them, if you believed this, that there was a link between the two, would you have enough motivation to give up the thing that's killing you? There's a big rabbit hole of issues here.
Yeah, it's not, you don't exactly have a very easy answer from that point. Welcome to mental health and our little squishy flesh sacks and trying to figure out what makes them work and how they work and also how art ties into all, where you start like equating some like infinitesimal Schrodinger's box to another infinitesimal
Yeah.
Schrodinger's box.
That's
It's just
basically
like,
what we're
we
doing.
don't really know everything that's here. We don't really know that everything's here. Let's try to see if we now know everything in the middle.
That's exactly what's happening.
It's like, okay, we can only do so much with this information. Anecdotal evidence is literally what art is. It's our anecdotes on self, if we want to think of it that way. And if you are mentally ill and you're making anecdotal pieces, that's the studies we have that we can actually look to.
It's true. We would probably still adore Vincent van Gogh's paintings because they're wonderful.
If he had both of his ears.
If he was fine. However, is there some sort of mysticism that makes us very attracted to them because we think that that's the worldview of someone in psychosis?
Like a little bit of, again, going back to like the fetishization of like, this is something other. It's the otherance. It's
Right.
like the circus freak show, how like that started. When it's like, these people are different. I'm going to pay money to look at them. I do think something like Van Gogh, especially in like the modern world, because Van Gogh wasn't super... Was Van Gogh super well known in his lifetime?
He was certainly not liked. No one
No,
wanted
he
his
was
art.
pretty
Yeah.
unanimously like, fuck you.
Yeah, I don't think anyone appreciated his art style for a
long time.
Yeah.
But I do believe that part of that came from understanding that this person was deeply unsettled and then trying to figure out if that was why one would like it. I do believe there is some element of like a social caste system of just like, I can understand that this comes from a person who's deranged or
outskirts.
on the outskirts. Therefore, I have assessed this art better and therefore I am of a higher social caste because I understand that. There is an element of that where you have that social and like artistic capital of understanding that.
Oh,
but it
art
comes
school. Don't even get me started.
it comes down to the fetishization of the mad genius, though.
Right.
That person was fucked, and I want to see what they did about it.
Yeah.
And I love Nirvana and I love the works of Kurt Cobain, but it's in the modern day of people who didn't grow up knowing that music. There definitely has to be some element of like, this dude isn't around anymore. And his music
And we
was
know
very
why.
much.
That's
and
the
we
important
know
part.
why.
If we didn't
and
know.
he spoke about it in his work.
Right.
So there is an element of you can't even remove the art from the artist in that point. It is about
Yeah.
the mental health of this artist and about these struggles this artist went through. So it is directly within that line of, is this fetishizing the mad genius who...
Well, it's a little bit of a deranged interest, at least,
It
to
is.
hear.
It's like watching a car crash.
Yeah.
In cases like that, and I mean that with the wholest respect, but at the end of the day, stuff like that, where like the overt topic of it is things not going one's way and talking about it and trying to kind of therapize themselves through their own music, you do have to admit that it comes from a space of, I'm watching this person deal with this. And if it ends the way it did with like a character like Kurt Cobain, you were watching that car crash.
And you almost want to hear through his music what suicidal ideation sounds like. Maybe even not from a point of fascination, but from a...
Just a point of interest, because that's just a morbid...
Maybe you want to feel... Because we want to feel this all the time. Like our experience is reflected in another's.
Yeah.
Like there's something validating about hearing someone else's sadness and heartbreak, because you can then say that your feelings are okay, other people have them. So it, on the one hand, is definitely like a fascination, but on the other hand, it might be just a very human instinct to relate and to see how others see the world so that you can validate your own viewpoint.
Yeah, well, if we want to go back to it not being like a psychological thing and more of a sociological thing, you do look for fringe means of communication. And for a character like Kurt Cobain, it was music. For a person like Vincent van Gogh, it was through art. And that was to try to communicate things. Maybe I won't say in Van Gogh's sense that I know it was about communicating those things necessarily. But in a case of someone like Kurt Cobain, it very much was trying to communicate those feelings and have someone else see it. It was a lot of like, witness this very human feeling that I am struggling with. Because the public popular forum doesn't really talk about those things in such openness. In the modern day, as things get better with our perceptions of mental health, it becomes more of a common topic. But like at that time, it definitely was not talked about like that. But it shows a lot of evidence toward it being more of a social cast as to why neurodivergents end up in the arts. Or
if I can get to what I think.
Go forth.
Because I basically think none of this.
Great.
I don't have the position that there is a strong link between creativity and artistry and mental health and mood disorders. And I don't have the opinion that that's all phooey and there's nothing to it.
I see.
Because there is something other than motor skills and visual
Yeah.
So then what is it? My theory is that all humans are great transmuters.
Yeah.
Witchy people call this alchemy, right? But what I mean by transmuting is turning one thing into another thing.
Yes.
And often what this looks like in people is turning experiences, good or bad, often bad, into something beautiful or meaningful. We are meaning makers, and we need to, or at the very least have an instinct to, take what has happened and turn it into something that at least means something. Ask a marathon runner why they run marathons. They'll probably give you a story of transmutation.
Yeah.
Or ask someone why they got that tattoo. They might give you a story of transmutation.
It might just be like, it was $5.
They might.
And it was a little rat eating cheese. And then they'll talk to you for like 30 minutes on why Ratatouille was the best film and then claim it wasn't transmutation, but like...
Therapists. It's a dumb example. Not dumb. That's a
No,
obvious
that's not
example.
dumb. That's like one of the most like prevalent examples of just like, you ask a therapist why they got into
Right.
therapy and
What are you
psychology.
doing?
They were trying to figure their own shit out, and now they're helping other people.
And now they're helping other people. Precisely. When it comes to people that are creative, and I'm not claiming to know how we got there in the first place. I'm assuming you were either born that way, it was environmental, or practiced.
Yep.
And in my case, honestly, I think it was kind of practiced. I started drawing and I kept drawing, and that's how I got to be creative.
I am of the camp that talent is not
Right.
existent. In a lot of ways, it's a combination of practice and of like a personally affirming taste. I think
Yes.
taste has something to play
Yes,
into
that's
it.
from the soul,
far
in my
more
opinion.
than predisposition.
I think the soul wants something in particular to
Yeah.
be expressed, and the creative then just practices the ability to do
Which
that.
there is a conversation of just like what predisposes taste, which is an entirely different
Yes,
conversation
yeah,
that
that's-
I've recently
that is a
picked
whole
up
rabbit
by
hole.
a French professor's video on Charlie XCX's Brat.
We'll link that below.
We'll link that below. Change the way I think about music.
So two things. One, you're a human who transmutes because that's what we do as humans. Two, you happen to be creative. So what do? You're taking your experiences, the things that happen to you, what's going on the inside, and you're turning them into art. And regardless of whether you have mental health struggle or not, it's very interesting for viewers to see what the world looks like, feels like, or sounds like to another, which is something we mentioned before.
Yeah.
But if what we are doing is transmuting pain, because you could transmute a wonderful experience too. But let's just make these.
Simply having.
Then artists are doing that in a way that's visible to everyone else. Hence the association between internal struggle and artists. It's not that only artists have complex inner worlds. We all do. It's that for whatever reason, we feel called to express that through our chosen media.
Yeah.
Most people suffer in silence, or at least not in a way that the world can see. Artists are simply not being silent. Again, whatever their chosen medium
Oh, that's
might be.
very fair, actually.
Yeah.
I could see that, again, from my angle being like autism, and a big thing about my autism is the fact that I just say shit as I perceive it.
Can confirm. Something I
can't-
like about you, by the way.
Can't be quiet to save my life. I could definitely see if that is prevalent within enough neurodivergent folks, and they happen to be creatives, that, yeah, if something bad happened, they'd be the first to say something about it because they're not predisposed to being quiet about it.
And that's not to say that all artists are extroverts, but you are
Oh,
expressing.
no.
You're expressing.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it loudly, but you are.
No, I'll do it loudly,
You're
but I'll do
showing-
it in like an echo chamber.
You might be doing it through poetry, like something a little more shy, but like you are
I don't like that this thing happened. It was bad. It was very, very bad.
slam poetry.
I'm just imagining how the word slam at the end. Actually, wild poem.
would be
I didn't
wild.
like this, and it was bad. It was very, very bad.
Slam. I was checking my notes to see if I had anything else on that, but that's the short end of it. Yeah.
I think that's both the sides we have to present here. Kind of the sociological angle and more of the psychological angle of things. Both not exactly confirming nor denying that there is a link, but that something results from it, period. Regardless if there's evidence for it,
Yes.
there's a result.
Yeah, I'm not denying the link. I'm just saying that the funny thing about creatives to me is that they have this need, this compulsion to transmute in a way that others can see through their chosen media.
Yeah.
it's not so much that they're especially fucked up. Got plenty of fucked up people who don't care to write a song about it.
People are people. People are meaty meatballs inside of bone suits.
Fleshy sacks of mostly water. That is a quote from Star Trek.
Oh, is that actually a quote from Star Trek?
Yes.
Fleshy sacks of mostly water.
An alien species that is far more intelligent than us meets us and calls us fleshy sacks of mostly water. And we're like, no, we're humans. And they're like, haha, you speak, you fleshy sack of mostly water.
They are not very wrong.
No. They were not wrong in this case either. I think this episode was about like how Starfleet, which is a thing, by the way. They were terraforming, which is also a thing. The planet, and they couldn't see that there was any life on the planet, but there was. It was just microbial, so it was really small. And the microbial life was very intelligent and preventing them from doing their work, and they didn't understand what was wrong. So
oh shit!
So the microbial life eventually found a way to present themselves to us in some way that we would understand. And was like, get the fuck out of here.
He's like, hey, stop that.
You
please.
fleshy sacks of mostly water.
You fleshy sacks of mostly water. That feels like it ties into like our whole productivity conversation of just like.
You're saying Star Trek The Next Generation is relevant to our current predicaments?
I think so. Why not? Want to do a tarot reading?
Let's do a tarot reading.
Hell yeah. I would once again like to remind you to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube.
Comment.
Like, review, and comment on podcast platforms.
Tell us what you think.
Tell us what you think.
What you disagree with.
If you hate it, say something about it.
Or your perspective. What's your personal experience? I'd love to know.
Share shit. Like, I love.
Oh, you know what? Good time to bring up our Patreon, where there is a Discord you can join, which is basically a group chat where we can talk about these ideas and share creatively. So
remember the thing at the beginning of the
community.
episode where it was like talk to each other about like our creative process and where we're at? Imagine everyone just like being open about that and everyone sharing experience and just helping each other. That's what the Discord is.
Sounds really cool.
Sounds pretty cool. It is pretty cool. We're also on that Patreon. We have some community tarot readings like the stuff we do on the episode, but for the greater good of people, we're working on having some fun things that you can purchase and support the podcast that way. Mm-hmm. As well as uncut episodes, extra little bits that we throw in every now and again. It's a fun time. Go check it out.
I will speak.
Oh, yes.
In case you are new to the podcast, this is a part that we do on every episode where we consult the tarot deck, which is a fancy deck of cards from which we derive meaning. If you're wondering more about it, you can listen to episode 3,
where we talk about both ourselves and why we've connected tarot to this podcast at all. We had a little discussion between recording the bulk of this episode and this reading, because it's a really interesting episode to try to ascribe a reading to. We were talking about mental health being this hugely overarching anecdotal thing that realistically there's not one thing to say about it. There's not one way it ties into anything. So like, how do we go about this without it being a preachy mess of me divining for an entire amorphous body of
mentally
everyone,
diverse people?
Yeah. But we share a pretty similar creative act at this point. Mm-hmm. We've intertwined ourselves to a good degree. And we started this episode talking about our general mental states.
Yeah.
Mine being very much about how I'm being dragged across these dirty, dirty streets.
You feel like
by
you're
my
in
own dreams.
A transitional period.
Yes, and I'm thinking of what it would mean to leave, and what grass could be greener on the other side. And it seemed like that was mirrored to some degree as well.
I would agree.
Being episode 7 of the podcast, famously the episode that we needed to get to.
Yes.
So here we are.
Which is a reference to another episode.
Because what is it? Most successful podcasts
don't get past
episodes.
Or if you're unsuccessful, you don't get past episode 7, I guess.
Okay, so we could still be shit. But I think it would be good to pose the question collectively, where do we go from here?
Yeah. Both of us could use some direction in this department personally, so we can direct it towards ourselves. But I love when the tarot tells us things about what's going on in the universe too. So here we go.
It has points more often than not. I do want to state before we pull the 3 cards and then
while
the
shuffling,
groundhog. Yes. While shuffling, I pulled 2 signifiers that popped out. what we have here is the 7 of swords reversed and the 9 of wands upright. As our signifier cards, I would like you to pick 3 cards of which to divine further meaning from. Do not turn them over, just pull them toward you. Okay. Now we're going to
I have pulled 3 cards.
Now we're going to pull the groundhog. This is the largest reading we've done on the podcast. This is a 6-card reading.
Uh-oh. Gonna have to divine many meanings.
Gonna have to divine some many. And we'll see how intuitive I can be. If you remember the last 2 episodes, I have been called out for needing to be a lot more intuitive with my readings because apparently I'm gifted.
According to other spiritual sources.
So, in this reading,
Fancy.
we have...
Oh, I haven't seen some of these.
Very powerful readings altogether. Oh, that is kind of crazy.
I see
Wait
the fool.
a fucking second. Okay. Immediately, I'm already seeing this as 2 readings that have occurred in parallel. I think these are mine, and I think this was your reading.
That's cool.
Okay, so scratch that. Don't reverse it. My reading was the 7 of swords reversed, the 9 of wands upright, and the 2 of pentacles upright. Your reading was the Knight of Wands upright, the Moon upright, and the Fool upright. 2 3-card readings.
I'm going to take a picture of this just because...
My entire reading is based upon 2 signifiers and 1 groundhog. Yours is just what you pulled.
That makes sense.
Using this little teeny weeny.
Using the little...
Because I love you, 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Polak. But I've looked at you so much for my own tarot purposes. I might also be making a tarot deck. Ooh. If you're an audio engineer, it's a tarot deck for audio engineers. Ooh. That's a niche that
Very
no
cool
one
project.
thought was ever going to be catered to. Ooh.
While Cole divines, we were talking about before how artists are kind of like truth seekers in a way. Like we like to shine light on things that we are interested in depicting or creating. So the tarot, I was just thinking, kind of ties into that really well because it's another way of finding truth and meaning. Uh-oh. What'd you find? Give it to me, Don't hold back. I can take it.
Give it to me, I'm worth it.
I don't think I've ever heard that voice out of you.
Sorry. I make voices,
I know you make voices, but that one was not one I expected.
Give it to me, I'm worth it.
Uh-huh.
So, the Knight of Wands here, given our conversations in the beginning, departure, absence, emigration, and change of residence by friendly means.
By friendly means.
By friendly means.
What does by friendly means mean? What does it mean?
I mean, I think if we're talking about, like, collective acts, the consideration of a change of scenery for those who would make that scenery worth changing to is something to look toward.
Okay, so this is about a change of residence potentially, and by friendly means just means I'm not leaving because something went wrong.
You're not being pushed away from it.
Okay.
You are choosing to go there yourself.
Okay.
Whereas, of course, the reverse is rupture, division, interruption, and discord. So
okay.
it's not, you are not being displaced.
Okay.
Because
Oh, that's like affirming that I don't want to live in New York in this.
yeah, a little bit. Where do we go from here? Whereas the moon is hidden enemies, danger, darkness, terror, and deception. Which I feel like if Knight of Wands is the where do you go from here, this may be what drives you to do so. In what you said, you spoke to how winter felt like it never ended for you. Mm-hmm. And it felt like what you were returning to after winter followed into the spring because of what I equated it to what you left on the other side in fall was not what you wanted to see when coming out of hibernation. Of that things needed to change. And that things didn't exactly age as you had expected them to. Because you may have left them on a more complacent note, and now you come back wanting action and seeing things actively against you.
Okay.
We talked about how New York does fight back on you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
If the move would to be to displace yourself by friendlier means for a greater good, even if your destination and reasons for the act of leaving are good, understanding that does not negate or forgive what bad reasons made you need to leave in the first place. Reasons for replacement and reasons for displacement do not have to sully each other.
So, in other words, it could be exciting to move to another place and good to leave something behind. It's not necessarily...
It's not necessarily just like, it's all great. It's
Or one
like
or the other.
there is separation.
This is really interesting. I don't know if anyone listening to the pod knows what these things mean or can help me with this. I would love to hear. I've been seeing a lot of dead birds, like a lot of dead birds.
No, it's been weird.
You've seen a lot of dead
pigeons. Like, they've been like finches. Little tiny guys.
And I've also been seeing dragonflies. And I looked it up, and the internet told me that just means that there's big change, the death of something in your life, transformation happening.
Ooh.
I've been wondering what that's referring to, because I kind of see some changes in my life, but maybe there's a bigger one coming in terms of a habitation.
A rehabilitation.
A rehabilitation.
I do have to take accountability of the fact that I am the one who has sparked some of these thoughts of the rehabilitation.
I mean, to your credit, definitely exciting opportunities on your end. However, it's kind of been since the second winter that I spent here that I've been thinking that this might not be my forever home.
Yeah.
Because the first one could have been just a fluke, could have been just depressing to be away from home for the first time. But then the second time where it lined up specifically in the same months, I was like, oh, this might have something to do with the seasonal change, this little depression that I experience. And that's when I started working on steps to alleviate that, getting my lights and my vitamin D. I have lamps in my apartment to deal with the
Little sad lamps.
Yeah, sad lamps and red light too. And I have, vitamin D supplements that I take, all these things, and, mindfulness practice, all these things to try to deal with that. And while I've gotten healthier over the years and better at coping, I still struggle with this. So it's still something that every time I think about my future, I haven't really seen it in New York because of that, actually.
There actually is a line in this book that I would like to...
You tried.
Okay, so the Fool is your third card, and I am going to use the literature a little bit because there's some interesting details.
You are forgiven.
I think are very applicable to our conversations today, involving both mental health, the creative act, and now the open book that is, what does rehabilitation mean? The Fool can often symbolize beginnings, courageously leaping off into some new phase in life, particularly when that leap is taken off some deep feeling rather than careful planning. A beautiful detail that I didn't really pick up on until I've done some further research for my own purposes is the fact that the Fool is carrying a satchel over their shoulder on the magician's wand.
Oh.
But instead of using it as this divinatory power, like the magician is giving weight to its ability to create an alchemy of all suits, the Fool knows that what they have is mundane to them. And therefore, they can move through their life as they please. Not worried about making an alchemy of things, but knowing that they're starting at a new phase and will do what needs to be done as it comes. They are not making sure they have all their ducks in a row before they do it. They are doing it because they know new things need to begin somewhere. And if you don't begin,
that's so
you
relatable.
don't move forward.
Hang
If
on.
you continuously hold yourself back from taking that new leap, from worrying that you're going to step off this cliff into the ocean, which is what's on the card, you're never going to move through that major arcana again. You're never going to go through another journey to reach another form of enlightenment. Because enlightenment, to me, I've never considered enlightenment one form. You reach many enlightenments throughout your life. What this feels like, your reading, your 3. We haven't even gotten into my 3 yet. What a lovely long episode this is going to be. Jesus fucking Christ. There's a lot of light coming through right now. Because this is talking about beginning anew elsewhere with those that push you forward and those that assist you in not a careless act, but a carefully impulsive act. One, that you are existing elsewhere because you deeply need to do what you're doing, and the people around you are doing the same. And that pursuit is what drives it, not the need to be pursuing.
I'm glad we have this recorded. What you said about not having my ducks in a row before I take steps and taking those steps without knowing what's to come, but sort of just because I can and I feel like I can just deal with whatever comes. That's that's a good nutshell description of my jump into creative living, where like I left something behind, my 9 to 5 without really knowing what would happen, and I've been just kind of like taking the punches as they come, and I still don't have my ducks in a row here, but I am very much like stepping forward in my creative journey without knowing.
So if that's the question of where do you go from here, unfortunately the answer is go. Where do you go? Forward.
Wow. Yeah. Cool.
Not worrying about what that forward might entail, just knowing that forward facilitates the deeper need that isn't being fulfilled where you currently are.
And you think this moon card, the moon, is not warning me, but so much speaking about the past, or
I would say that if the Fool and the Knight of Wands were not around it, it literally feels like the light is radiating from the experiences of the moon. The visions of what you were to receive from your current positions starting to dim, knowing that you either have to make changes here or decide what your greater act is and rehabilitate within that creative act. It does feel like the Knight of Wands and the Fool are actually radiating light around them. So it does feel like it is coming out of its own tunnel. If this was at the end of the deck, I would take it.
I see.
I would take it as more cautionary. If at the beginning of the deck, I would straight up say, stop listening to me. I might be the problem. But
That's a lot to take in.
that's not to take myself out of accountability. The Seven of Wands upright is also another card that I've been very interested in as of late. Because upright, it means...
And this is one of the cards that you pulled for yourself.
This was for me. This was my one of my signifiers, which now that there's 3, I'm just going to talk about the signifiers and the groundhog. But these are...
And the groundhog we're referring to is just
the
card.
2 of Pentacles.
It's the card.
Card under the entire deck.
Yeah, and we pull that just for some fun excess.
Well, it's fun, but it's also not failed us so far since we've been doing it.
It's totally relevant to the reading.
In fact, it's not failed us to the point where it almost just feels redundant by the time we get to it.
Yeah, groundhogs spiritually are supposed to be redundant aspects of the reading. It's supposed to be the shadow of the reading. So,
in the question of where do we go from here, I do pose that question very much in the collective creative act. Where do we go from here as this podcast, as creative partners? Where do we go from here? The Seven of Wands upright speaks to the preparations of battle. The card upright depicts a person breaking behind enemy lines and taking their weapons, making sure that when something needs to get done, preparations have been made to make it easier for themselves, to make sure that when they make that act, they've done what they can to make sure they have the biggest possibility of success. Reversed points to me making a decision based on the fact that what preparations I've currently made here have failed me. I have not yet begun to make enough preparations to be as bold in my preposition of where do things go from here. I am speaking very much from a place of passion when I say, like, I want to go elsewhere and start a practice where I know I can do it out of passion. I do have to acknowledge that I need to put preparation on my end of things to uphold that end of the gamble.
yeah,
Let's
so
call
that,
it a gamble
so that
because
it's
it
not
is a
just
gamble.
a dream, right?
Yeah, I currently have a lot of intention and dream and vision behind what I came to New York for in the first place. But how I prepared for it in New York years ago needs to be reassessed in doing it now with new people, with new intention, with new passion.
And new information.
I need to reassess that dream entirely, not because it's wrong, but because it's different. My side of this reading points to me not having the same impulsiveness as your Fool.
That makes sense. Looking at the two of us.
I do need to make sure my ducks are a little bit in a row so that when hardship comes my way for what I'm attempting to do, that I have means of answering to them. With the Nine of Wands upright, I take this as a result of that preparation will make it so that when I'm asked the harder questions about my practice, my passions, and where that lies within the community that I wish to build in moving elsewhere, that I can not only speak for myself, but for, in the case of this reading, the army behind me. My support structures, those who have made moves with me, those who, even though they're not directly tied to my own creative act, are actively, in doing their creative act, motivating me to pursue my own. I can speak not only to myself, but those who motivate me to cover my own bases.
Right, and those people are very important in your life as a creative.
And I need to make those preparations, and I need to very deeply consider where I'm falling short. It cannot fail because of me, which is especially hitting when a lot of these things are my ideas. And I might be the loose end in them.
To defend impulsives all around the world, what I would like to say is...
We're talking about neurodivergence and the impulsive. Two types of artists live inside you.
Leaping before you look does two things. It doesn't prepare you for the fall, but it does mean that you've acted on something that you needed to.
And regardless of how prepared you were, you better have a plan now. You jumped.
Yeah.
Now that I've made the jump, I have to make sure that the people I've shared that idea with, I'm not going to be the reason that my idea that I share with another person fails.
Well, the only reason, and I think this goes for creatives everywhere, the only reason to share your ideas with other people is so that they'll hold you accountable to those ideas and be excited about them with you. If you're sharing them just to share them, it almost takes a little bit of the magic away from your own idea once you give it to another person, because you get some sort of satisfaction out of sharing your ideas with another person, right?
Absolutely.
But you want to keep that excitement for yourself so that you follow through on it.
Yeah.
So the only reason to share in that case is so that other people keep you accountable. I can ask you, like, so Cole, how are your Faraday cage plans going?
That is a lot of the reason why I've been more vocal about it, is because, like, if it's just in my head, not a lot of things happen with that. I've had the 9 of cups, the one where there's just that one figure looking at all these cups floating in the clouds and there's like different things coming out of the cups. The downside of that is that those are ideas that are being kept ideas because the second you poke at them, they're real, and then they have their negative implications, not just the positive daydreams of it. And I've been deconstructing that and breaking out of that and actually beginning to poke them and share the act of poking with other people to make sure I don't stop poking them. So the 2 of Pentacles was the groundhog of the entire reading, both in my side of things as well as yours. And it speaks to general recreation, gaiety.
Happy Pride, everybody.
Happy Pride, everybody.
It's June.
And it speaks to doing things from a sense of passion and joy, which, again, where do we go from here? Whatever is done, your part of the reading says, where do we go from here? Forward. This speaks to forward, but make sure whatever means forward, wherever that veers, is coming from a genuine place of passion and joy. Make sure you are surrounded by those that share that passion and joy with you, and take part in that exponential build of people supporting people. Because the 2 of Pentacles speaks to the duality as well. If I'm to take this with us, with you and my partner, with me and your partner, with me and other people that I've talked about this with, there's a lot of dualities of people that each individually have their own alchemies of creativity. Me and you have this podcast and art as a whole. You and my partner have your own yoga pursuits. Me and your partner have the whole music thing going on. And then collectively, they have their own unique soup.
Yeah.
But it's from a combination of dualities.
I agree.
It's about the people there. And it's about those people being the reason you can weather a greater storm. In this card, you see this person with their duality completely ignoring the horrid sea behind them with the boat being thrown the fuck everywhere.
Yeah, whatever.
And he's sitting there just like, I have my things that may bring me joy, and I'm surviving because I have the
very
means
relatable.
to survive. They have what supports their own means of coping in a healthy way, so that no matter what torrential downpour is outside,
They're still
you have
dancing.
your homestead.
I like that. That's relatable to me too.
So where do we go from here? Forward with joy.
Hey, yo!
And then I'd have to put some more preparation into my greater dreams that have caused people to have that question. But move forward with joy.
Change is good. Ducks can be in a row at some point, and maybe we both should.
Your ducks need to be less concerned with being in a row. My ducks need to be concerned with being in a row.
Honestly, I do need to get my ducks in a row at some point.
Oh, you don't even know what ducks can be in your row. You might have a goose in there at some point. So that's been this episode of Practically Happy. This has been a long one.
Yeah, thanks
We
for
have-
joining.
At
Thanks for
this
staying.
point, 2 hours and 7 minutes of footage and audio that's cut down to 2 parts. Thank
We
you
may
for
need
sticking
to,
around.
Yeah, break this up.
No, this is being broken up into 2 episodes for sure. If you saw a cut between part 1 and part 2, that's this realization. So thank you for being here. If you've enjoyed, like and subscribe, comment on YouTube, review on your podcast platform of choice. Take a look at our little Patreon if you wish to support. We would really hope to see you as we continue forward with joy.
I'm Abby Rhodes. This is Cole Racer, and we are Practically Happy, and we love you.
Go forth. Love yourself.
I hope
Love
you're
your
doing
creative
well
act.
mentally.
Me?
Well, yeah.
Oh, just the audience as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I really hope the audience is doing well. All right. Scram!